Our police! Our police! Show me your hands down! Don't attack me, I say! Down there to these! Get the fuck out to these!
Ireland is in the middle of a battle against organised crime gangs.
I would say number one priority is organised crime, and if it's not checked, it'll grow and grow and grow.
Today, organised crime has brazenly come out of the shadows.
By eroding the rule of law in large parts of our society, we are threatening the rule of law in the whole of society.
In Limerick, criminals openly flex their muscles and flaunt their power.
Cities depend on people being able to go out and feel safe in public. You can't have a thriving urban environment with high crime and fear.
The gangland godfathers rule the roost over whole neighbourhoods. And few citizens step out of line.
If there was any 12 jurors asked to adjudicate upon a gangland trial, a certain section of them would shirk their duty because of fear.
Law and order is struggling to overcome the tyranny of the local mafiosi.
The tight organisations with the commitment to each other not to give evidence against each other. The kind of omerta thing that you get in organised crime in the United States. The use of the gun, the use of intimidation, the attempts to take over sections of communities.
The deliberate execution of citizens who get in their way marks a new phase in the evolution of organised crime in Ireland. The attempt to dominate a whole city.
Of all the particular people we've put away for long stretches, I have never seen conscience, no remorse. The normal rules of humanity or society does not apply to those particular people.
Welcome to Bad Fellas. This is the face of organised crime in Ireland today, Wayne Dundon. This is the force behind Limerick's most notorious street gang, the McCarthy Dundons. Their assault on anyone who crosses them has compelled the police to change tactics and the state to change the laws in order to meet the challenge posed by Wayne and his band of brothers.
The dead man has been named locally as David Noonan in his early 20s.
19-year-old Aidan Kelly from Moyross in Limerick City.
This fatal shooting happened in the busy Thomond Gate area of Limerick. The victim was...
Ruthless crime gangs have laid siege to Limerick for over a decade. Dozens have lost their lives, hundreds have been maimed, and whole neighbourhoods have been uprooted in the murderous feuds that have been waged to establish control of the drugs trade in the city and the wider region. The plight of one family stands out in the story of Limerick gangland, the Collins family. The night gang boss Wayne Dundon walked into Steve Collins' pub and confronted his adopted son Ryan was the start of a nightmare.
Wayne Dundon came to the front door with his young sister Annabelle Dundon. She was only 14 at the time, and Ryan refused her entry.
Wayne Dundon was used to getting his way. When Steve Collins' son Ryan refused to serve his sister Annabelle, the gangster believed he'd lost respect.
Wayne Dundon took offence to this, put his finger up to Ryan and told him, "Fuck you, you're dead." He went away. 29 minutes later, somebody came back and walked into the lounge, into the bar, sought out Ryan, shot him in the knee, tried to escape through the bar, couldn't get out, came back while Ryan was lying on the ground, shot him again in the groin.
The attempted murder of Steve Collins' son Ryan was not an isolated incident. Limerick has been plagued by violent gangs for years. The city proportionately has one of the highest rates of homicide by firearms in Western Europe.
Proportionately speaking, about 5 times as many gun killings occur in Ireland than do in comparable countries such as England and Wales or in Scotland. Firearms possession and firearms discharge are quite high in Limerick. There is a legitimate concern there, so Limerick does seem to differ to a certain extent from Cork and from Galway. It's an intersection of urban deprivation, drugs trade, and also an expression of masculinity on the parts of the individuals involved, because this is certainly a male crime.
Limerick was once a city synonymous not with crime, but with religious piety, social order, and poverty.
Throughout the 60s, I can recall that at the start of circuit court sittings, the county registrar would stand up and he'd present the judge with a pair of white gloves. And that was to signify that there was no indictable crime in the city or county of Limerick. And that used to go on term after term.
I arrived as a young guard in Limerick at the end of 1971. There was very, very little crime. Certainly no serious crime occurred in Limerick certainly in the late 60s and into the mid-70s.
Limerick's biggest social problem was not crime, but housing. Many parts of the old city were dilapidated and overcrowded. The corporation's response was to build 2,000 houses in a place called South Hill, far from the centre of town.
The houses were built, but without any facilities of any kind. There were no churches, no schools, no shops, no pubs, nothing. And I think very quickly people started to amuse themselves by engaging in violence and vandalism and things of that kind, and that gradually degenerated into worse.
The first thing that struck you when you went into the home was unemployment, absent parent, either father or mother, poor conditions in the houses, bad clothing, no heating, no food in the fridge, no school, no looking for a job. They lived in another world, really, without any support from the general community at large.
It was clear by the mid-1970s that it wasn't a success. But notwithstanding that, the then city manager wanted to go ahead and build another similar estate in the other side of the city at Moyross. And I remember pleading with him at the time not to do it. I said, you're going to replicate the problems that we have in South Hill. And he said to me that he was under pressure from the department to produce numbers of houses, and they didn't seem to be really interested in anything except numbers. Within a relatively short time, you had the South Hill problems replicated there. Limerick is still suffering from the results of that.
One of the results was the McCarthy-Dundon gang. In May 2005, the leader of the gang, Wayne Dundon, was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his threat to kill Ryan Lee, but a court later reduced this to 7.
The following month, our premises broken into and set alight. I mean, what you have here is just the front. The back is completely gutted, destroyed. You know, our dreams destroyed, everything destroyed. The start of a horrendous couple of years for us now.
In Limerick, the genesis of gangland can be traced back to places like South Hill. Vandalism and antisocial behaviour was the curse of the ghettos built by Limerick Corporation. To sort out the vandals, the local authority turned to a career criminal called Mikey Kelly. The city is still suffering from the fallout of that decision.
I'd just like to say I can speak on behalf of my family that we are totally crime-free.
I mean, Mikey Kelly was running a protection racket, and the agents of the state were hiring him and paying him to continue with the protection racket. And when Mikey Kelly protected your factory, he never assigned security guards to it. He just put the word out and put a big notice up. These premises are being protected by Mikey Kelly. It was a protection racket, and the state shouldn't have been involved in it. But from their perspective, you know, criminal damage was reduced to 0 as soon as the Kelly sign appeared on the gate.
I was violent. I was a violent criminal. I expressed myself in a violent way.
I rang the then manager and I said I was surprised that he was employing this individual. And he said he had no option, that this fellow was, as he put it, effective. When he caught some young fella throwing stones through a window, he beat him up and broke his leg. That was regarded, unfortunately, as an effective way of dealing with the vandalism problem.
By making Mikey Kelly a bit respectable, the corporation had sent out a toxic signal. In Limerick, crime pays.
It enabled the people who he attracted in to operate freely and to become quite proficient in crime so that they could form the basis of membership of future gangs. So he was a very, very significant figure in the evolution of organised crime here in this city. There's no doubt about that.
Like all crime bosses, Mikey Kelly was a parasite. The city council and private companies were coughing up. So too were the ordinary people of South Hill. Every week, Mikey went from door to door collecting £1 from every house. That was the price for keeping Mikey Kelly off your back.
Coming to you from the Brooklyn waterfront in New York City, this is Mafia Talk Radio.
Cut the cards and hide your wallets. This is Mafia Talk Radio. You think you know, but you don't really know.
Other cities have been doing business with badfellas for a long time. New York. For years it was the epicenter of organised crime in America. The home of extortion, racketeering, and City Hall doing business with mobsters. Criminal enterprises thriving on a pervasive climate of fear.
I've seen it here in Yonkers and I've seen it in New York City, my combined 30-plus years of law enforcement, that organized crime, especially what we're dealing with now in the 21st century of violent street gangs, are decimating neighborhoods throughout the country. And if you look at some neighborhoods, some poor neighborhoods, in some cases that's viewed as the only alternative for youth, where maybe they didn't stay in school, maybe they weren't provided with a good education, maybe they didn't have a strong parent or parents at home, and then they decided to go into a group, a street gang, an organized crime group, and they've gone on and now probably wind up either in jail or unfortunately dead.
You can't have a thriving urban environment with high crime and fear. Cities depend on people being able to go out and feel safe in public. Fighting fear, as well as actual crime, is essential.
The capacity to terrify is an essential and universal feature of organised crime. From the streets of Limerick to downtown Washington, D.C., there is a common denominator: fear.
Fear is an absolute key for organized crime groups, and they capitalize on regular citizens when it's keeping legitimate businesses or law-abiding families out of the community. The impact is widespread and it's felt for years. The impact can absolutely lead to folks that have to live scared or look over their shoulders for the rest of their lives.
Steve Collins knows what it's like to live looking over his shoulder. His testimony had helped convict gang boss Wayne Dundon. And for that offence, a price was put on his head.
A threat came out from prison. A letter came out to say that I was to be murdered for €75,000. And a guy called John McNamara, who they called Pitchfork, was to be murdered for €75,000. They mistook Shane Gagan for Pitchfork.